Hello and welcome. My name is Alex Romero from Galasso Learning Solutions. On this week's Genuine Learning blog, we are going to be looking at the GAO, the Government Accountability Office's responses to those frequently asked questions that you all sent in about that system of quality management. This document, the frequently asked questions establishing and maintaining a system of quality management, was published and released on December 15th, 2025. And the reason why the GAO went ahead and released this document and answered these questions is that since we've had the 2024 Yellow Book come out talking about needing to design and implement this system of quality management, the GAO has received a lot of questions around this. So they went ahead and put this document forward to answer some of those questions so everybody has an official response that talks about all the intricacies within having this system of quality management. The one thing that you might have noticed on here is there was one small issue with this. So this document from the GAO was released on December 15, 2025, which just happened to be the same date that we all were supposed to have our system of quality management implemented. So it seemed like this is a little late, but as you can see when we go through this, there isn't anything that's really groundbreaking in this document, so it's nothing that changes things significantly. So it was okay that it came out on the same date. It would have been nice to have this information probably a couple of months sooner, but there wasn't anything that made it, oh my goodness, I'm now going to have to throw out the system that I designed because it no longer adheres to the requirements based on the guidance by the GAO. That did not happen. One thing I do want to note here on the bottom is that if you are a federal government audit organization, so you do federal government audits, you were able to defer that design and implementation of the system of quality management until no later than March 16th of 2026. And this really has to do with the lapse of appropriations when we had the shutdown in October and the beginning of November. So this guidance has 3 sections in it. Our first one is going to be looking at the system of quality management and that risk assessment process. So that first step that you kind of go through. The second section is going to be concentrating on quality management, monitoring, and that remediation process. Lastly, our third section is going to be looking at the engagement quality reviews. Within this document, we did have a couple of new figures that were included. So in section 1, we do have this nice figure that shows that the figure is the quality management risk assessment process. And so it's going to show that process. And what you will notice here is that it's a continuous circle. So your first step is going to be establishing those quality objectives. Then what are those risks to those objectives? And then how are we going to design our system to really mitigate those risks? Well, it's not just a one-stop shop. This is going to be continuously happening. And so that's why we see those arrows going around this circle, because as soon as you've designed, you still need to be thinking about those quality objectives and if you have any new risks that might make it so that you aren't able to achieve those objectives. Each of these sections is going to have a number of questions and the GAO's responses to them. So in our first section, there are 11 questions. I'm just going to go through a couple of them, but do know that the entirety of this document is out there and you can look at all 11 in this section 1. So for section 1, we have our first one is a common question that we've heard. I actually already implemented a system. I had clean peer review, so I went with the 2018 requirements. So do I really need to have a whole new set of policies and procedures? Well, the answer here is no. You wouldn't need to have an entirely new set of policies and procedures. You would probably just need to update them and make sure that they were still going to adhere to now the 2024 Yellow Book requirements and the system of quality management. Our second question that we see a lot is, when does that initial risk assessment need to be performed? Is it December 15, 2025 by that date, or December 15, 2026? And the answer to this is that you needed to have that risk assessment completed by December 15, 2025, so that then you could create your system of quality management. And then by 2026, or that year after you've implemented that system, you would be looking at the evaluation to see how it went through that first year. Our next one is, do you need to establish all of the quality objectives? And the answer to this, again, is going to be yes. Yes, we do need to go through all the quality objectives and ensure that we have looked at those risks and have mitigated them. I'm not going to name those all out now because we will see them in our next slide in our next figure. The last question that we're going to look at in this area is, does the GAO have a template or a guide that shows how to create this system of quality management? And the answer to this is no. The GAO did not have a template, but there's a lot of different organizations that did have those templates. So you can go and look at the AICPA or other areas where you can see how to really design this, which hopefully you've already done, unless you are doing those federal government audits and you have a couple of months still left. Our second section here is, again, looking at that quality management, monitoring, and remediation process. So here is a figure that kind of shows the relationship between our risk assessment process and that monitoring and remediation process. Again, a continuous loop here. So I use this phrase a lot when I'm teaching different classes, but this is not a set it and forget it. You need to be doing this continuously, thinking about it. And here you will see the list of all those quality objectives. So we need to have identified the risks for each of these objectives, including our governance and leadership, our engagement, performance, information and communication, all 6 of these items. In addition to looking at that figure, we have 7 questions in this section. Our first one is, what is that relationship between the risk assessment and the monitoring and remediation process, which we just saw in figure 2, that it is a continuous loop and you're going to be integrating both of those together. We are now looking at, does a small firm need to hire another audit organization to monitor their system quality management? And the answer to this is no. Now, it might be helpful if you do have outside eyes looking at this, educated outside eyes, but you can do this internally if you have a small firm. It sometimes is hard to kind of pull yourself out of the day-to-day and look at the system. And so that's why people have questioned, well, do I need to have somebody that's not going to be doing the day-to-day work? And the answer is no, you can do it, but you just need to be aware that you might have some bias in there because you are more involved in the actual system itself. The last question we're looking at on here is, what's the difference between an engagement quality review and an engagement inspection? So really the engagement quality review is doing this proactively, ensuring that the audit organization has met those quality objectives before we've gone through and we've done the report and submitted the report. An engagement inspection is going to be the opposite. It's going to be looking at everything retroactively. Our last section here is section 3 about the engagement quality reviews. We have 4 questions in this area. One of them happens to talk about our Yellow Book CPE. So does that engagement quality reviewer need to have Yellow Book CPE if they're not performing Yellow Book engagements? Now, looking at that question as it's written, the answer would be no. However, there are a lot of different rules and stipulations in there about Yellow Book CPE, so make sure you know them before you just say, no, this individual doesn't need to have any Yellow Book CPE. Our next question on here is that Yellow Book is going to require that the engagement quality review to be completed before we issue our report. Now, the question that's coming from firms is, how do we issue a timely report then? Well, the answer to this is kind of comical, but they are saying basically don't wait till the last minute. You can be doing this review while you're conducting the audit so that only the last little bit needs to be completed, and so you'd be able to issue your report in a timely manner. So what are our key takeaways from this? First off, that the GAO has answered a lot of those frequently asked questions that were out there, talking about really establishing, implementing, and then also maintaining that system of quality management. Next, yes, the timing wasn't ideal, but as I stated at the beginning of this blog, nothing here was really groundbreaking, earth shattering. There wasn't any really new concepts or substantial changes. So it's just really going to be beneficial for you as you move forward in having this system implemented. And lastly, that we had the questions really address that QM process. What are we going to be doing for our monitoring and remediation processes? And then some of those specific questions about that individual that is going to be that engagement quality reviewer. So the effective date on this was as of the release day of the report, which was December 15, 2025. Also, don't forget that GLS has a wonderful audit staff level training. We do 4 different levels, your new hire and interns, all the way up to your experienced seniors. And we have that schedule all the way until mid-2026. So scan that QR code if you're interested in those. Jacqueline Vino is our instructor on those, does an amazing job. And it's only $500 for your team to go through this audit training at each of those levels. So thank you so much for joining me as we finally got some of the answers that we were so craving from the GAO about implementing and maintaining that system of quality management. Have a wonderful week and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.